Greetings from Alaska. This is Fred. Fred Roll, Curry Young Tribal Council member from Dillingham, Alaska. Um, I've been on the phone since earlier this morning with Brandon. He was a caretaker at a lodge for almost 10 years. First, he said 8 years, not a problem. Loved his job, stayed in a remote cabin. It was a fishing lodge. They had generators, they had showers, they had all these things that he would need. And and it was a good way for him to save money. He would commercial salmon fish in Bristol Bay, take those proceeds, stash them away, and make some money over the winter. And he was doing that for, like I said, almost a decade. Well, winter before last, he no longer has that job. He'd been at the same place for damn near a decade, no issues whatsoever, loved it. Well, part of this little area where he was at, there's a generator shed, and there's a pump house that they used to pump water from a creek about a quarter mile away, something like that, he said. So in the wintertime, in order to get water, fresh water, they would cut a hole and they would pull the pump when it froze up so they could just drop the pump in the hole and get water, right? And he would fill up I think he said it was a 500-gallon reserve tank. He would just pump it till it was full, pull the pump, and be done with it. Have water for months. So as he's refilling this thing, he noticed it looked like strange tracks off in the distance, because where it drops down in the creek, there is a like an eddy area, and then it continues on down, almost like a beaver had started to dam it up a little bit, something like that. And then something didn't go right with the beaver, I'm taking it. So anyway, he sees these strange tracks, and he couldn't quite make it out because he was almost on the same plane as the tracks, but he could just see the holes in the snow. And he was like, that's kind of weird. He could tell it was bipedal, so he figured, well, it must have been, a trapper or something. Noticed the lodge, like, oh, okay, I'm in someone else's area, and moved on. Thought nothing of it. Went on about his day. The next morning after that, there was two little cabins to the back side of this place, little reserve cabins for couples who want privacy outside of the main lodge. Well, typically he would stay in one of the smaller places just because he didn't want to clean the place from messing it up, honestly. So he tells me the first time in 8 years he decided he's going to sleep in the main lodge. He wakes up in the morning feeling like someone was standing over him. Now, that's not a good feeling to wake up to, but he jumps up, looks around, there's nothing there. Then he looks over to where the balcony door is, and this thing's going like this, swaying back and forth. And he immediately was like, what the hell? And he jumps out of bed, and he doesn't know what to do. He's just kind of standing there stuck, kind of like in a fighting stance, like, what do you do with that? Trust me, I can imagine this poor guy. He said when he stood up and he was staring at it, they maintained eye contact while this thing's going like this back and forth, and then it starts doing this weird kind of quasi in a circle thing, and then it leaps off the balcony, just gone. And so he was sitting there, standing there, and he's like trying to absorb what he just saw. He said he's never felt like that before in his life. Now he's freaking remote, all alone. Ain't no one coming for months. He has a sat phone. The battery's dead. He can't even call out if he had a medical emergency. It was a mistake he had made. So he knew he had to fire up the generators and get this sat phone charged, right? But now he just seen this thing on the balcony, and he doesn't want to freaking go outside. So down in the main room of this lodge, the guy has his gun cabinet, and he has two rifles in there around, a shotgun, and I think he said the other one was a Winchester 30-30 lever action. So he was like, okay, I know there's guns down there, and he goes down, opens the case, grabs a shotgun, and all he could find was like a number 4 birdshot, something real light. I don't remember exactly. He said they would use that in the fall. He would use it to get spruce chickens. So he didn't have any knockdown power. It was basically birdshot, but it would make noise. So he loaded up a couple rounds into it, opened up the back door after checking really well, because he just woke up that morning to this thing watching him. So he pops 2 shots off in the air, shuts the door, locks it, and is going around looking out all the windows. I would too. I do not blame him. So now this happened about roughly midway through his winter shift. He still has 6 weeks left to go on this contract before he sees anyone. So he really wants to charge up that sat phone and make some communication. So no sound, no movement. He calms down. He drinks coffee. He wakes up. He goes out, and he's armed with that shotgun. And he goes over to the generator shed, and he fires up a generator. He plugs in everything he needs to. Goes back to the lodge. Gets his sat phone charging. Now, that time of year where he was at, it doesn't stay daylight out very long at all. It's like a long morning for the sun to rise, and then it just kind of, we have about 3-4 hours of actual sunlight on the horizon, and then the rest of it's just like, sun's down, that kind of light to the air. Alaska's different. So he was sitting there, and it was starting to get dark again as he's charging this phone, and he's got the place locked down. He moved the couch over by it. It had a couple double doors, and there was a lot of glass, and he was petrified. But he didn't want to go into one of the smaller ones because he was afraid it would be easier to get him. And I asked him, I was like, well, it looked at you and ran off. What made you think it was there to hurt you? What gives you that impression? Because I was curious, like, you sure it wasn't curious? Because I'm looking for, well, I'm not looking for it, but it'd be nice to hear something other than predatory behavior. This poor guy, he wasn't prepared for that shock. He never even, because he would fish, and then he would come up in the fall, after his fishing thing, and it was just him. I think for 2 years he had brought a dog, but how do you reason that out? He's sitting there by himself trying to figure out what the hell's going on with this. So as he's sitting there and it's getting darker, he notices across the river, he sees something black move across in the tree line. And he goes, well, that's moving really fast. I wonder if that's like a moose running from something, because he said it was large, but it was just dark enough he couldn't make out exactly what it was. So he finally, it took forever to charge his sat phone. The generator was pulsating or doing something, and so it would start charging and then stop, and it was basically a trickle charge. And so he wasn't about to go figure out why the generator was straining. He didn't want to be outside when it was getting dark, and I understand it. He just let the generator run out of gas that night, charging the phone. He got it to about 30%, and he figured, okay, well, it's too late. I'll wait, and in the morning, I'll call and just give a checkup. He wasn't sure he was going to tell anyone about it because, it's a hairy man. He doesn't want to sound like a lunatic. Understandable. He takes the sat phone up to this loft area where there's a huge California king bed for the main, whoever's sleeping area or whatever for the guest. Whoever pays the highest dollar gets this loft, basically outlook in these windows, and the balcony is over off to the right hand side. So he's up in that portion of the lodge, and he's calmed down. He's doing a little sipping, drinking a little wine. And he has to smoke, and he smokes out on that same balcony. So after jonesing for a smoke for a while, and it had gone in the darkness, he figured, okay, there's not a sound. I'm going to go out on the balcony get me a cigarette, you know. So he gets out there and he's sipping on his wine, smoking a cigarette. And way off in the distance, he hears what sounds like a wolf howl. But he was like, I never heard a wolf sound like that. It was very... he said it sounded like a woman being murdered with some kind of strange growl mixed with it. Now, I've heard it many times. So it worried him, so he finished his cigarette real quick. Now, typically he has a butt can that he puts all his cigarette butts in, puts the lid on it at the end of the season, takes the trash out so none of the, clients or whatever sees any of his cigarette butts. Well, that coffee can that he kept his butts in was gone. So he's like looking around for it, like, where in the hell is this? He noticed that off the balcony tracks from where this thing had leapt. He never looked from the balcony, but he could see where it had landed when it jumped off, and basically the direction it ran off once it jumped off the porch. So he kind of got hypnotized thinking about that, and then he gets the chills, like, why am I standing outside contemplating this? I'll deal with the coffee can thing later. So he tucks back inside, shuts, locks the door, slid this little dresser over in front of it. It's one of these doors with it's basically almost all glass with just, trimmers and stiles at the top and bottom, right? Beautiful. Especially in the summertime, you can, a lot of light in. But not in this situation. He was very scared about the thing coming back, and rightfully so. So he slides over the little dresser, and then he said he went and sat on the bed and he was drinking some more wine, and he felt himself trembling inside. He couldn't... He was trying to rationalize what had been going on. He wakes up feeling eerie, and there's something looking at him. And it's big, and it runs off. Now he's hearing the screams. He's trying to make sense of all of it. And he knows he's got limited power on this sat phone. And so his game plan, and before he was going to bed, was first thing in the morning, I'll make sure it's clear, I'll get more gas in the generator and get some more charge on this. Have it charging while I try and make some calls, just touch base with people. That's his game plan. So before he goes to bed, he goes down, and they have a little compostable toilet downstairs. That's usually not used in the wintertime, but he wasn't going out to the frickin' outhouse. He just wasn't going to. He would rather clean up before clients showed up in the spring or whatever than to go outside. I don't blame him. I would have used the sink. Screw that. I wouldn't go outside either. So he goes down and he handles his business. And he comes back up, and he wasn't dwelling on it. It was just a note of concern at this point, right? So he comes back up the stairs, and he says the way they go around, they cut up, and then they cut up. And so with his back facing this way, going, behind him would be the upper loft and that balcony way. So as he's coming up the stairs, he doesn't see the balcony. It's behind him. He comes and wraps around, and once he gets to the top of the landing to turn towards the little sleeping area where it's the open loft, he turns and looks, and there it is again, doing this number. And it's squatted down to be able to see through the doorway because it's so tall. So it's sitting there looking at him, doing the same thing again, going like this back and forth. And then this time it comes in closer to the window and is doing this kind of number, kind of really, really getting in on him, like, not literally, but in on the window to get a better look at the guy, right? So Brandon's like, what the hell? Well, the shotgun's downstairs laying on the table. So he immediately runs, grabs the shotgun, comes back up, and this thing shows him his teeth and jumps off again. Because he's standing there trembling with the shotgun, like, yelling at it, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you. Ugh. It takes off. So now he's super spooked. He was about to be going to bed, and this thing is in the window doing this stuff, right? Now, the generator had shut off. He has lanterns going on inside there. So part of what this thing was doing had a slight mirror effect to it. There was just enough shadow he could see it coming in and doing its thing, okay? So he didn't have the most crystal clear description he could give to me. He said it was human-like. human-like, but real broad, thick jaw, and something not right with the eyes. He couldn't pinpoint it. He said there was a slight bit of like eye shine, but proportionate to the amount of light coming from inside the cabin, right? And so he's tuned up. He is not going to fall asleep. He's wide awake. The slight buzz he had from his wine is gone, and he's in freak out mode. So he's like a little tin soldier, man. He's walking through this lodge up and down, back and forth for hours, he said, with this shotgun, anticipating something bad. He said he felt when he looked at it like it was trying to size him up, like, is he really a threat to me, or can I just snatch him? Those were his words, not mine. Sorry, William Jevning, his buddy, Creek Devil, he awesome dude. So I apologize, lost my train of thought. Thanks, William. I'll call you in a minute, bud. Anyway, so he's in freak out mode. He's lost his buzz. He's over working here. He's been there almost a decade. He told me, he goes, man, I quit that night. They just didn't know it yet. And I said, okay, fair. Yeah, I'm with you. But now he's in a situation. He's stuck there. He hasn't been able to call anyone yet. So he was doing the math, and where the owners of the lodge live was roughly a 4-hour difference from where he was. So he knew in less than 2 hours he can make a SAT call without waking anyone up. Because, again, he doesn't want to sound like a friggin' lunatic. You know? So many people get treated like dirt because they can't help what they saw. You know? Growing up, when I was a kid, I didn't ask to see these things. I didn't ask for this thing to come and try to attack me. I didn't ask for none of that shit. You know, so I feel where this guy's coming from. You don't want to be judged, but, you know, at the end of the day, these things are out there, and it's just the reality of it. Anyway, I digress. So he's got his game plan now. Just a couple more hours, he's going to make this SAT call. He's only got 30%, but all he needs to do is just say, I'm not feeling right. Can you send someone to get me? And just leave it at that. He doesn't have to say it's a medical emergency. He doesn't have to get an EPIRB and have the Coast Guard come get him. But he was going to make it urgent that he needed to go see a doctor. So that's his game plan. So he goes, okay, I'm good. I'm going to drink a little more wine, calm down. So instead of going to the wine, he goes to blueberry brandy, I think he said, because the wine was getting low or something. So he went to this blueberry brandy and started basically chugging blueberry brandy to self-medicate because he thought he was losing his mind. A couple hours passed. He tries one SAT call. It kept dropping. It wasn't going through. And so he's getting worried. SAT phone ain't working. Not uncommon. You pay a lot of money for that service, I tell you, just for a hit and miss bullshit. Anyway, so he's going to give it a few and try again. And so as he's trying, he's going to different places within this lodge. Now, he knows it works out on the deck, but it's still dark out. So he's going to kill time until he can go out on deck and use the SAT phone. And this poor guy, he didn't ask for none of this. You know, he's just stuck in a situation where he didn't even like it. Lay down, Weasel. Molly, are you okay? You a good girl? All right. So, you know, freak out mode, all that. He drinks his brandy and he's calming down again. And he's counting. He's got about 4 hours till it even resembles light outside. Okay. And it's he can already start trying to communicate, but he knows it works for sure right out on that deck. So he finally gets enough liquid courage, and he's got the shotgun, and he grabs one of the lanterns and the SAT phone, and he's gonna go out on this deck and make his call. So he does that. He gets out there. He lights a cigarette. He's like, no, I'm over this. I'm gonna make my call, and everything's gonna be just fine. He opens the door, and he goes, I don't laugh. I laugh because it's like, yeah, of course, it has to happen this way. But he opens the door, and he starts going out there, and he said it had to have been about less than 100 feet away off to his right-hand side. The loudest scream focused right at him he had ever felt. All his bravery, everything went right out the window, door shut. He moved the little couch that was down there in front of these. It's mainly glass in the front of this place. Mainly glass. And this guy is dealing with this shit. So he slides over this little couch in front of the door for whatever good that would do. And he's back upstairs. And now he's trying to find every lantern. He's putting white gas in all the ones he can. You know, he's getting every light he could to light this place up because now he is shook. He's panic ridden. He doesn't know what to do. So nothing else happens outside of that scream. He's tucked upstairs. Nothing else happens on the balcony. Eventually he falls asleep and wakes up at the brightest part of the day, which that time of year is probably right around between 1 and 3, somewhere in there. And so it was roughly noon when he woke up, because he crashed hard just from the stress and all that. He crashed hard. So he wakes up and, oh, hey, okay, it's light out. I'm going to take a look around, make sure nothing broke in or anything. Everything's clear. He grabs sat phone, looks, runs out, makes his call. He's like, you know, he gets a hold of the guy, no problem, from that spot on the deck, just like he knew it. And he tells the guy, hey, I haven't been feeling good for quite a few days now. I think I should at least get checked out. You know, can you send whoever to come snatch me, and then I'll get cleared, and then I'll come back. The guy was like, yeah, definitely. It may take a day or so to get someone out there. But if I can't communicate with you, if you can't get through, know that someone will be coming, and just keep your ear out. He was like, okay. You know, because typically, if need be, plane will fly in on skis, land on the snow, on the river, or whatever, as long as there's no overflow, and get him out of there. So he's like, okay, great. I appreciate it. I'll be ready to go. I'll be on standby. The guy goes, okay, you're not feeling good. Don't worry about your standard stuff, making sure all that kind of stuff. You'll come back, and you could take care of it then. He was like, okay, yeah, sure. He wasn't coming back. He went, made sure the generator shack was locked up, everything was unplugged. He took the time quickly to deal with the composting toilet, and made sure the pump house and all the other stuff was cleared up. He had all his gear, which at this point he had trimmed down to a little load of stuff because he realized what he needed, what he didn't over the years, right? Plane makes it in the next day. Nothing happens since the scream. This poor guy drags his stuff over and is helping the pilot load it up. And, you know, small bush pilots, they got to load it themselves because of weight, and they know how they want it situated. They'll lift the weight. Okay, I'll put this here, you know, because it's a small bush plane. You know, weight is an issue. So as the pilot's loading this stuff up, pilot turns and looks at him, and he goes, have any visitors? And then laughs at him. And he goes, well, what is that supposed to mean? He goes, hey, man, I'm surprised you've been a caretaker here this long. The ones they went through several 1 year one time because of the hairy man. And he's like, the hairy man. And he goes, just some mythological thing, you know. It's the pilot never seen it. The pilot was just ribbing him and giving him shit because of the history of people telling him, hey, you know, there's a freaking hairy man over here. The pilot was just basically mocking him, and he didn't think it was funny, but he let it go, and flew out of there with his stuff. And he didn't specify whether he ever talked to the owner. I think he talked to him briefly, but he's never been back up here, not even to commercial salmon fish last year, or none of it. He's done with Alaska for now. Brandon, I hope you make it back. Alaska's great. It doesn't happen all the time. I'm sorry it happened like that to you, but geez, can you imagine being there, feeling that isolated, having to use a sat phone to call for help? He's lucky it didn't get ugly, like ugly. Me personally, I wouldn't sign up for that kind of job, not up here. I don't care what they're paying. You know, when it gets to a certain point, the cost doesn't freaking matter, you know. Once these things put that fear in you, that primal fear that you can't shake, you can't figure it out, you don't want nothing to do with them. It's not like you're going to go and seek them out, you know. Well, anyway, most people don't. But anyway, that's what Brandon shared. Great guy. Hey Brandon, give me a call later after you watch this. Let me know if I glazed over some stuff, buddy. But it was because otherwise I'd be on here for an hour with things that just don't quite go along with it. No disrespect, but I think I got the gist of what happened out. So, hey, thanks for listening, Brandon. Thanks for sharing that, and beware the woods. Just you never know. This poor guy was there almost a decade, and not a problem until all it takes is once, right? All right.